Hello and welcome to PETA's July Town Hall meeting. I'm Lisa Lange, PETA's Senior Vice President of Communications. I'm joined today by PETA President Ingrid Newkirk, PETA Executive Vice President Tracy Reiman, PETA Senior Vice President Dan Mathews, and by Dan Paden, Vice President of Evidence Analysis, who leads PETA's investigations team. Together, we'll give you an inside look at how PETA campaigns are saving the skins of animals and revolutionizing the entire fashion industry. Today's town hall is during the final days of PETA's Save Our Skin Matching Gift Challenge, a great way to double your impact on all of the work we'll be discussing tonight. You can donate by pressing 7 on your phone at any time to have your gift matched dollar for dollar. We'll also be giving away a $100 gift certificate from Corker, one of the many vegan fashion innovators and PETA supporters you'll hear about tonight. Stay tuned for that. We'll answer your questions about PETA's work live later in the meeting. And to ask a question, just press 0 on your phone. Or if you're joining us online, simply type it into the field at the bottom of your screen. If we don't get to your question this evening, we will be responding to each and every one as quickly as possible after the meeting. If you're just now joining our meeting, welcome. I'm Lisa Lange, and I'm your host for today's PETA Town Hall. Any gift you make by pressing 7 on your phone during our meeting tonight will be matched thanks to a generous PETA donor, doing twice as much to boost the vital work for animals we're discussing this evening. Okay, it looks like nearly all of our callers are on the line now, so let's get right to it and introduce PETA President Ingrid Newkirk. Ingrid?
Thanks, Lisa, and welcome new friends and old. This is our 4th Town Hall meeting of 2020, and what a bizarre, tumultuous year it's been. But when life gives you some lemons, I suppose the trick is to make as much lemonade as you can, and we've been busy doing that, some of which we'll tell you about tonight. Yes, we've been busy, as you'll hear, including PETA's groundbreaking work to stop people from stealing the animals' own clothing. That, of course, is their wool, their skin, their feathers, their fur, and in the end, of course, all those animals lose their lives. There is no retirement home for the sheep or the cows. PETA is still, as you may know, the only major animal organization on the planet with campaigns not just about fur, but about all the other ways animals are mistreated for clothing. And what we do is reveal what's behind every alpaca sweater, every leather belt, every reptile skin handbag or boot. I just saw Kim Kardashian out with an Hermes crocodile clutch. And we show everybody where those things come from, and we're inspiring an entire new generation of consumers and designers in the hope that they will replace these products of cruelty with all the revolutionary new materials that are out now that don't harm animals, and they're doing it. Dan Mathews is going to come on in a bit. He'll give us a look at how the vegan fashion revolution began. It's always good when you're moving forward to look back. And there'll be PETA's Executive Vice President Tracy Reiman first. I'm going to pass you over to her now to update us on some of the progress that we've been making since that last town hall. So over to you, Tracy. Have we got Tracy?
I'm so sorry.
We've lost you. Were you on mute, Tracy? That's the thing I do sometimes.
I was, but anyway, thank you, Ingrid. We certainly have made a lot of progress. In the time when even Macy's and the Queen of England have sworn off fur, the idea of walking into a store for cologne or cosmetics and walking out with a piece of fur anything is startling. Last year, we were pretty surprised to discover that Sephora, the world's leading beauty retailer, was selling false eyelashes made from mink fur. Obviously, a product of the fur industry that's less noticeable than a mink coat, but obviously just as cruel. We quickly contacted Sephora and reminded them that minks are animals who like to swim, climb, and burrow, all things denied to them, along with basic veterinary care and even adequate food and water on the factory farms where they're killed, sometimes with their heads stuck in jars other times crudely gassed, and other horrific methods. When Sephora flatly refused to stop selling mink eyelashes, we turned to our members and supporters for help, and as always, God love them all, they leapt into action. Music sensation and outspoken vegan Billie Eilish brought more attention to minks when she told her more than 40 million Instagram followers, quote, "Your bleeping mink eyelashes disgust me." So last week, after receiving a whopping 280,000 emails from our supporters around the globe and an intense social media campaign, Sephora caved. It confirmed that it has banned mink eyelashes in its stores and will be buying only synthetic and faux lashes going forward. That great news came just days after two other big wins for animals that I'm dying to tell you about. You may remember that last year, PETA released the first ever expose of China's badger brush industry. And that when companies like Procter & Gamble's The Art of Shaving saw our footage of badgers being bashed in the head and killed for their paint, makeup, and shaving brushes, they quickly moved to ban badger hair. Now, thanks to pressure from more than 110,000 PETA supporters, we took the action online, and the parent company of popular men's grooming brands Royal Shave, Pomades, and The Stash have also agreed to ban badger hair shaving brushes. And on nearly the same day, British retail giant Marks & Spencer and online powerhouse Overstock.com also pulled Alpaca from their stores after seeing the video from our Alpaca investigation that Dan Paden will tell you about in a bit. I have plenty more great news to share with you, but first, back to Ingrid to clue us in on how PETA laid the groundwork for all that we're accomplishing for animals today.
Thanks, Tracy. One of the things I learned is who Billie Eilish is when you did this campaign. But of course, none of this recent progress would have been even remotely possible without the generosity of our members. And by the way, everyone, tomorrow there's going to be another huge investigation that we're releasing. It's into the global leather trade. And so we're breaking that tomorrow morning. Please have a look at PETA.org tomorrow and pick up that video and share it far and wide. I mean, people buy leather dog toys, they buy leather bags and shoes, and they need to stop. Anyway, my first appeal to you is that I hope you will press 7 on your phone. Please press 7 on your phone right now, if you can, to donate to this Save Our Skin challenge. Every gift you make, whether it's $5, $500, $5 million, that would be really nice. But it's all wonderful. Will be matched thanks to a terrific PETA donor. So if you can, please press 7. If you're joining us online, you can just go to PETA.org/skins, and you can have your gift matched right there as well. But the roots of progress Tracy just told you about run very deep. They go all the way back to PETA's very beginning, which of course is 40 years ago now. Counts by
Hey Ingrid, it's Lisa.
Yes?
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Sure.
There's a bunch of background noise, and I'm worried someone's not on mute who might need to be. So I'm just breaking in there. Sorry about that.
No, is it a marching band?
It sounds like it. Sorry about that.
Sorry, no butt in any time.
Still there.
But 40 years ago, it was all about fur. Fur industry sales in the United States then were at about $2 billion a year, and that's billion, which today I suppose would translate to be more about maybe $6 billion. And you were hard-pressed at that time not to see a fox or a chinchilla coat or some awful mink stole on anybody who was going to the theater or just out on a cold day. In fact, people were so oblivious to how a fur coat came to be that you would actually go to a Humane Society board meeting or something like that and see women there in fur. But I have to say, I have to look at myself and my own life, and there was a time when I was just as oblivious as anybody else. I think many of you know that when I was young, I had a jacket with a bushy collar that was actually made of 2 silver foxes. And if you looked carefully, you could see how they were stitched together at the back of the coat. And then I got my first full fur coat, full-length fur coat, a couple of years later, and it was this Ginger Rogers number. That's aging me, isn't it? It was very arty, it was very glamorous, and it was made of, catch this, 100 or more squirrels, little squirrels. And there wasn't anybody back then to ask me what on earth was I thinking, because anti-fur activism was unheard of. There just weren't any activists, and I had to be shaken awake to swear off fur. That happened, as many of you know, when I became a humane officer. And one day I went out on a call. Somebody said there were steel traps set behind a convenience store somewhere in Maryland, and they were there. They were set by juveniles for a lock. And of all things, talk about karma, in one was a dead squirrel, and in the other there was a living fox. And the fox did survive. She had to have her leg amputated, but she made it. And I was totally shaken to think I had worn both of these clever, wonderful little animals. So when PETA began 40 years ago, the only people who really knew what happened, the horrors of the fur trade, were the fur factory farmers, who we called ranchers back then, and the fur trappers. And that's why, from our very beginning, long before the age of the internet and cell phones and all these other wonderful gizmos, PETA began showing people, consumers, retailers, designers, everything that the fur trade was trying to hide. We sent out actual photographs of coyotes and other animals, including dogs. People were walking their dogs, and they fell victim to these awful steel traps. And the reaction of consumers who had never seen anything like that before was absolute shock. Then I was in Manhattan, I think that later that first year, and I grabbed headlines because I had to buck up my courage, and I jumped on the runway at a fur show. And I always remember they were playing ABBA's song, Money, 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 It's a Rich Man's World. It couldn't have been more ironic. And I was carted off. And then not long after that, we took out ads. We had PETA ads decrying fur. And we had them on subway cars, buses in New York, Chicago, all the big cities. They became seasonal staples. And soon we were placing that famous TV spot. Some of you may remember it. It featured the same sort of audience that I'd seen at that fur show. And as the model was going down the runway, they were getting splattered by the blood that was coming out of her fur coat. We ran that on almost any cable outlet or TV station we could find, anybody who had the courage to run it. And how did the fur industry respond to our growing pressure? They weren't very happy. They launched their own counteracting ads with celebrities like, I think Cher was one of their first ones. And their celebrities would tout fur as a lifestyle. That was a new word then, and saying, what becomes a legend most? Fur. Of course, everything's changed, and Cher has totally rejected fur. She won't touch it. So we turned up the heat back then. We conducted investigations. We exposed the absolutely appalling conditions animals were kept in before being hooked up to a car battery, electrocuted. Even we, on one fur farm for chinchillas, we found them injecting the animals with weed killer to kill them. And we did everything. We shouted, "Fur is dead," from the rooftops, and we crawled along the ground with our hands in traps and fake blood, washable red paint. We were outside all the shops we could get that were selling fur, like Macy's and so on. And we even lay down and blocked the entranceways, and they got hauled away. So fur wearers began feeling the heat, and PETA leaflets would turn up in their coat pockets. We would go into fur salons and stick them in the pockets. And before long, there were celebrities and consumers across the globe who were rejecting fur. But most big designers really didn't care. And that started changing in earnest when Tracy and I and other PETA activists took over the Calvin Klein offices. That was in New York. It was 26 years ago. And that took over the headlines everywhere. It was the first crack with these designers. Within a week or two, Calvin Klein became the first major designer to drop fur. It was a wonderful moment, and we just kept going full steam ahead. So here we are, 2020, and the fur industry truly is just a sliver, a shadow of what it was when we began campaigning against them. I think you'll probably know, and you probably celebrated the news last fall, about 8 months ago. California became the first state to ban fur trapping. And soon after that, California, of course, banned the sale and manufacture of new fur clothing and fur accessories. I know that fur ban won't go into effect for a few years, but notes from the fur trade's funeral march can be heard around the world. And Germany's last fur farms went out of business just last year. Japan, the UK, many other countries have their own bans on fur factory farms. They've been in place for years, and now many remaining farms are being shut forever because of COVID-19. When news broke, you may have seen it here, it was all over the Euro press, minks on Dutch fur farms tested positive for COVID-19. And fur farm workers, the people who fed and watered the minks, actually contracted it from the minks. So as soon as we heard that, PETA Netherlands wrote an urgent appeal demanding that the Dutch government move up the plan to phase out mink farming by 2024. That was their original plan. We got a member of parliament to back us. We held really colorful demonstrations in The Hague. And just a few weeks ago, the Dutch parliament agreed with us. They voted overwhelmingly to close all the fur farms by the end of this year. And I think it'll be sooner than that, actually. So Dan is going to be on any second to tell you how we're now ramping up the pressure on Prada, Louis Vuitton, and others to shut down their own pathogen petri dishes, as we call them, the animal farms, before the next pandemic strikes. But first, Lisa, I'm going back to you because I think you have a couple of quick reminders.
I do. Thank you, Ingrid. And remember, all of tonight's speakers will be taking your questions about our work live a bit later on the call, so be sure to press 0 on your phone to get yours in early. And someone out there listening right now will be the winner of a $100 gift certificate from innovative vegan fashion company Corker. Now joining us for his first PETA Town Hall is PETA Senior Vice President of Campaigns, Dan Mathews. Since soon after Dan started working as a receptionist at PETA in 1985, he's been a major part of many of our most iconic moments, from orchestrating and participating in our first Rather Go Naked Than Wear Fur protest outside a chilly Tokyo Fur Expo, to headline-grabbing demonstrations at fashion shows in Milan. Dan helped persuade some of the biggest names in fashion to swear off fur, exotic skins, and other cruel materials. And today, he's working to show designers that the future of fashion is vegan. Dan?
Thanks a lot, Lisa, and hello, everybody. Those watching through your computer should be seeing a picture of fur designer Gianfranco Ferre's fashion show back in 2004. And I got into that event in a priest outfit, so it seems natural to pop on the runway holding a banner that read, "Thou shalt not kill." The security guards soon tackled me and rushed me off the stage, much to the disgust of distraught Italian women who began shouting, "Leave the priest alone!" Ferre died a few years back, and today, after countless runway takeovers and PETA protests and thousands of hours of meeting with designers and retailers across the fashion industry, forgive me for saying so, but the fur trade he built his career on is nearly as dead. I met with another rather shaken designer, Calvin Klein, after that office takeover all those years ago. I walked into his office with a VHS tape of PETA fur farm footage, along with a steel leg hold trap and a pencil to help illustrate how an animal's leg would snap when they stepped in one. Calvin could not turn away from our video, and after a few hours of discussions, he pledged to drop fur. Not long after that, PETA was convincing other big-name designers like Ralph Lauren and Tommy Hilfiger to read the writing on the wall and follow suit. But despite this progress and the growing popularity of top-notch fur-free designers like Stella McCartney and Vivienne Westwood, some holdouts did remain, but not for want of PETA's trying. One of the most notable examples of them was John Galliano. Back in 1999, when he was the designing chief for Christian Dior, coincidentally succeeding Fauré, he invited me to visit his home in Paris. And I went there and I did my level best to get him to drop fur from his lines. And while Galliano said he wasn't really a fur person, he said he wouldn't stop using it for fear it would hurt his position at the company. Giorgio Armani was hardly any better. Following years of discussions with PETA and frequent protests, he told Time magazine in 2007 that we'd convinced him not to use fur. But just a year later, he backtracked and began making clothes with rabbit fur for kids. Of course, we immediately called him out, and we demonstrated in front of his flagship Milan store holding pictures of Armani as Pinocchio, creating a powerful video featuring actor and PETA friend Gillian Anderson, and protesting at Armani stores around the world. It did take some time, but our relentless campaigning and negotiations reached a tipping point. Armani announced he was going fur-free in 2016, and this time it stuck. Gucci dropped fur in 2017 after 2 decades of PETA protests. In 2018, a flood of our big targets in fashion figured it out also. I was now a vegetarian. I was with a now vegetarian John Galliano. He actually ended up becoming vegetarian and told me in his Paris studio years later that he had dropped fur, and we sat together with Elle magazine for an interview in which he announced his new fur-free policy. Michael Kors and Donna Karan and Jim Choo and even Donatella Versace all went fur-free soon after that. Chanel not only went fur-free, but they pledged to stop using exotic skins, including snakes, lizards, crocodiles, and stingrays, whose skin is stolen to make shoes, wallets, and belts. Now, Prada has dropped fur, something I could hardly imagine just a few years back. But in their case, there's still a lot more work to be done. And Tracy will tell us about that. Tracy?
Thanks, Dan. As you can tell, with the exception of a handful of cruel holdouts like Canada Goose, we've all but won fur. And even Canada Goose is feeling the pressure. That we know. Today, because PETA works for all animals, we're campaigning really hard to stop the use of leather, wool, exotic animal skins, badger hair, ostrich feathers, and every other covering stolen from an animal. You may remember when PETA investigators exposed the factory farms in Zimbabwe, Vietnam, Texas, and Florida, where alligators and crocodiles are bred in tanks of fetid water. They're butchered in the most painful, crude, and barbaric ways. For example, with a steel rod rammed down their spines, all so that the company can keep turning a profit, making wristbands, purses, and wallets. Soon after those investigations launched, we made international headlines when we persuaded household names like Nike, Cole Haan, Diane von Furstenberg, and even Victoria Beckham, who is well known for her bags, to ban crocodile, alligator, and all other exotic animal skins. That was a great moment. Last year, our persistent campaigning helped us achieve another milestone. Technically, California banned alligator and crocodile skin sales back in 1970. But the exotic skins industry fought tooth and nail for nearly 50 years to keep that law from going into effect. And sadly, they were successful. So in 2019, we enlisted the help of thousands of PETA supporters, including, I'm sure, many of you on the call now, to send urgent emails, keeping the pressure on officials, and it worked. The California legislature finally upheld the state ban on alligator and crocodile skins, but they added a ban on the sale of skins and body parts from other animals like hippos, caimans, and certain other lizards. So this is a huge win that PETA and our supporters made happen every step of the way. So thank you to all of you who helped with that. But just as with the fur trade decades ago, some designers are still stubbornly refusing to see the suffering behind exotic animal skins. And Dan's working on that right now.
Yes, indeed. And, after so many years of working to persuade designers to drop fur, you'd think some of them would be tired of seeing someone from PETA walking into their offices. But the opposite is actually the case, and more of them are really starting to get it when PETA speaks. One way we put pressure on those who still don't get it is by taking the animals case to CEOs and shareholders during their annual meetings. PETA has managed to snatch up shares in companies like H&M, Gap, and Ralph Lauren to help us do just that. From the slaughterhouses that are the center of many U.S. coronavirus outbreaks to the Dutch fur factory farms Ingrid mentioned, any place where animals are crowded together in filthy conditions, abused and killed, can hold the same risks as the live animal markets that led to this year's pandemic. So we try to connect the dots for everybody, and they're finally starting to see it. This is certainly the case on the farms that supply the skins of crocodiles and alligators, where workers are exposed to the blood, waste, and fetid water, usually without any sort of safety equipment. So in May, we wrote a letter to PETA before their virtual annual meeting, urging them to ban exotic skins rather than put the world at risk of further pandemics. That letter generated some terrific media coverage on the exotic skins trade in Italy and around the world, and we're just getting started. Last week, during their annual meeting, we asked LVMH, the LV stands for Louis Vuitton, whether they would continue to put the public at risk or move to ban exotic skins and fur. We shall see. Let me close by mentioning a terrific sign of just how far we've come since my early days at PETA. Last June, PETA and designer Stefan F. debuted a gorgeous all-vegan wool menswear collection at the start of New York Fashion Week. The event was a huge success. We did it in the middle of the street in the Fashion District. Fox News even broadcast it live, and it brought a wave of fashion media attention to show just how chic, cruelty-free fashions are. That show was such a big deal that longtime PETA nemesis, the Council of Fashion Designers of America, or CFDA, whose events we have disrupted for decades, the CFDA actually invited us to speak at their prestigious Fashion Education Summit. A few weeks after our show, I was standing in a hotel conference room before more than 100 fashion professors from top universities across the country at the CFDA event. Of course, I spoke about what happens to animals before their skins reach designers, but the teachers were especially excited when I showed them the growing variety of innovative, sustainable vegan materials, from apple and cactus leather to soy-based silk and even cork, all materials that are starting to replace leather, wool, and other products of cruelty. There's no doubt that the future of fashion is vegan, and PETA is helping designers usher in that future right now. Back to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Dan. We'll be telling you more about all of those amazing new materials that don't harm animals in a minute. But before we do, let's pick our winner of the $100 gift certificate from PETA business friend Corker, whose range of sustainable vegan wallets, bags, and accessories for men and women are both beautiful and, of course, cruelty-free. And that winner is, drumroll please, Stacy Loeb from New York City. Congratulations, Stacy. We'll be in touch with you about your prize after tonight's meeting. Everyone on the call can make animals the winner by pressing 7 on your phone right now to make a donation. Your gift during tonight's meeting will be matched, doubling your impact. So thank you in advance.
Thank you, Lisa. And please, everyone, do all you can to make our work strong. We're making tremendous progress against the global skins trade, and animals need this kind of momentum. We need to grow. We need to not worry if we have enough money to do the things that we do, which are changing the world for animals. I want to give a special shout-out. Wonderful people, thank you all for giving, because everything is being doubled. Gilbert of New York, $25. Margaret, Chicago, $25. Mary, Connecticut, $25. All those donations become $50. We can use it. Teresa of California, $30. That's marvelous. Nellie, Missouri, $100. That's terrific. And we have Claudine in Washington. Claudine, I know who you are. $250. Bless your heart, each and every one of you. It is going to keep us strong. Whatever the future holds, we will be strong because of you. Our members empower us. They put fuel in our tanks, and we can do more the more we have. So thank you. Please press 7 if you haven't already. And now I'm going to introduce you back to somebody you may not have heard from before. I'm not sure. It's PETA's Vice President of Evidence Analysis, Dan Paden. He's going to fill us in on the very first ever PETA investigation into how alpaca wool is obtained, something people really haven't thought about. The story of that investigation broke in the New York Times just a few weeks ago. You may have seen it. Look it up. If not, perhaps it's on our website. Over to you, Dan.
Thank you so much, Ingrid, and good evening, everyone. My deepest thanks to all of you for making possible what our brave investigators do. They can only do it with your support. In my years here at PETA, I've had the honor of helping launch many groundbreaking investigations into the global skins trade. That includes the first ever investigation of Angora rabbit farms in China, and that includes each and every one of our 13 powerful exposés that have revealed the systemic abuse that sheep endure and die of in the global wool industry across 4 different continents. And we've now visited 116, I think, different farms and shearing operations. And as Ingrid mentioned, our latest investigation gave the world a first ever glimpse into an industry whose cruelty mirrors many of them, but involves an animal most people are not familiar with, certainly not as familiar with as they are rabbits and sheep, and that's alpacas. Alpacas are sensitive, inquisitive, they are social animals, they're rarely by themselves. They enjoy each other's company so much that they actually, this is fascinating, they cooperate to establish an agreed upon quote-unquote bathroom, so to speak, to help keep their other areas where they graze clean. They have such charming personalities that some humans actually keep them as companions and post YouTube videos of alpacas completing agility courses and other activities that attest, to their innate intelligence, much like people post videos of their dogs and cats. So in late May, the New York Times, thanks to the work of Lisa's department, shared with millions of subscribers our groundbreaking new investigation of the alpaca trade. We had 2 PETA investigators travel down to Peru, which is the world's top alpaca producing country, and pay a visit to a farm called Malkini, which happens to be the largest privately owned alpaca farm in the entire world. And the investigators found pain and terror and fear and abuse almost everywhere they looked on that massive property. I'm going to briefly describe, in case you haven't seen the video, what we found. It is unpleasant to hear. The animals' cries are very unpleasant to hear, but it's important that we hear those animals' cries, and it's important that we know what those animals endure so that we can share that with people and educate our friends and family. Our investigators saw that workers often pulled alpacas away from their friends, from their peers, from the herd, by their sensitive tails, which of course have the spinal cord and the vertebra running through them, so they're causing fractures and probably permanent nerve damage. Then they slammed these frightened animals, many of whom were heavily pregnant, onto tables just to shear them. And the alpacas cried out. Their legs were almost wrenched from their sockets because workers put them into a crude restraint device that looked essentially like a medieval torture rack that you might see in an old horror movie. And alpacas, like sheep, like goats, like the other animals used for their skins, are prey animals. And so these restraints make them terrified that they're about to be killed. And of course, as Ingrid said earlier, these animals are killed when they're no longer wanted or useful for their coats. And so these alpacas cried out, they spit, they actually vomited in profound fear, and their piercing screams echoed beyond the walls of that facility. The shearers then quickly and carelessly set to work cutting off their coats, showing just the same disregard for these animals as you've probably seen shearers show in our wool industry investigations. And we documented that even though some of the frightened alpacas suffered deep, gaping, painful wounds, they were never even given a topical numbing spray. And so they felt every single painful stitch when the workers crudely tried to close up those gaping wounds. And the shearers worked so roughly. You know, they're paid by the number of animals they shear and not by the hour. So the impetus there is for speed. So they work so roughly, in fact, that they actually cut the eyelid of one alpaca right off her face. So when the workers decide they've taken enough of these animals' wool, their fleece, they'll drop them and throw them to the hard concrete floor. And these prey animals who have been tense with fear for 3 or 4 minutes stagger their way back to the herd. And some of them are in such shock that they actually freeze in place on the floor, surrounded by predators for several minutes after they go through this ordeal. Malkini, that farm that the investigators went to, is owned by a company called the Michel Group, which is the world's largest exporter of alpaca tops and yarns. And before the case broke, they actually claimed that shearing does, quote unquote, no harm to alpacas. That bizarre claim is obviously discredited by the video that's been released that we captured. And when we presented, Tracy's department presented our findings to global fashion giant Esprit, they wonderfully agreed to phase out all alpaca wool. Gap, which owns Banana Republic, Athleta, and other brands, and H&M, which is the world's third largest fashion retailer, have cut ties with the parent company Michel Group as well. But as Dan was saying earlier, not all retailers have been as responsive in the wake of this information and of our investigation. And Tracy will tell you more about that.
Thank you, Dan. The New York Times article that first broke the news of our alpaca investigation was about more than just the alpaca case. It actually broke down how PETA now has a seat at the table with the fashion industry powerhouses around the world, and, well, it's no wonder. With so many landmark investigations of the global skins trade in recent years, our corporate team has been working overtime to get fur, angora, wool, mohair, cashmere, and any product that is made from animals off of store shelves and racks. And we're having a lot of success. Today, many companies are gracious and responsive when we present them with evidence from Dan Paden's team, particularly when we give them a chance to do the right thing before we release a new investigation. So corporate supply chains can sometimes move truly glacially. So providing extra time for companies to examine PETA's evidence and sort out the logistics of how to change their stock is invariably more effective than launching an investigation and then calling them out. Some companies, of course, will even begin to work with us directly to connect them with cruelty-free alternatives to materials we're urging them to drop. So months before the alpaca case went public, we contacted H&M, Gap, and Anthropologie to give them a chance to see our video and commit to making changes well before the world knew about the abuse our investigators found. Gap and H&M, as you know, responded positively. The exception was Anthropologie. They didn't respond to our initial message or the many follow-up messages we sent. They didn't even bother to respond to the New York Times when the reporter asked them for comment. So today, just over 1 month after the Alpaca case made headlines, more than 120,000 kind PETA supporters have already written to Anthropologie demanding that they drop Alpaca in favor of animal-friendly materials. And you can count on us to keep the pressure on until they finally do. Ingrid, back to you.
Thank you, Tracy. I forgot to take off my mute that time. So if anyone listening has yet to add your name to our action alerts targeting Anthropologie for selling these products created from such misery, please, after this meeting, go to PETA.org and sign on. Let's have your voice added to the mix. And please, get everyone you know, even those you hardly know, everyone in your neighborhood, at work, if you go there, everyone in the family, everyone on your social platforms, to please sign on. We need to have masses of emails going to Anthropologie. The alpacas are counting on us. It's really, really important. We've got to get people away from depending on animals for clothing. This isn't the Stone Age. We're not survivors, that we have to somehow cobble together something we've stolen from an animal's back. So this is a very, very important issue. We don't want any more animals' clothing taken off their backs for human beings. Got to stop. I have another request, too. Please keep us going strong. If you haven't already, please press 7 on your phone and donate to tonight's Save Our Skin Matching Gift Challenge, because every dollar you give will go twice as far due to the match to support all of this vital work, everything we're discussing tonight. I have many people to thank. I want to thank Glenda from Ohio, $25. Thank you so much. Beth from California, 20 makes 40. Carol from Massachusetts, 15 makes 30. Carol Ann from Reston, Virginia, $50. That's $100 that's going into the kitty to help those alpacas and other animals. Sally from Alabama, $20 makes 40. Thank you. Greg from Colorado, this is great. You're giving $10 a month in a pledge. So that really is the way to go. If anybody hasn't considered it, pledging a monthly gift is fantastic. Betty from Pennsylvania, thank you so much. $7 makes 14. Judy from Sarasota, $30. Ruth from Virginia, $50. Diana from Texas, $100. That's a $200 match gift that's going into the kitty. And Richie from Maryland, bless your heart, $500, which is $1,000 for this campaign. And we are just going to go like mad to get this match together. So I hope to hear from many more of you soon. Anything you can do is wonderful, and the animals will thank you. Back to you, Tracy.
Thanks, Ingrid, and thank you to the many, many wonderfully generous gifts that you're all making tonight. It is really what fuels us, so thank you, thank you. By the way, I wanted to share a colorful fur demonstration story of my own. Those joining us online should be seeing a picture of me from the mid-90s. That's me on the right, shivering alongside another PETA campaigner in Tokyo. We were painted as PETA's leopard ladies, and as you can see, we drew quite a crowd, had quite an eventful trip to the police station, and massive media coverage around the world drawing attention to the cruelty of fur. And of course, this is one of the great ways that we're able to move these companies away from using fur and get people to stop wearing it. So without a doubt, we have come a long way since then. Modern consumers have moved beyond simply rejecting fur or leather from their wardrobes or dropping meat from their meals. They're applying their vegan values to every part of their lives, and PETA does everything we can to help them succeed. Whether it's the new vegan dilly bars at Dairy Queen or Beyond Burgers at Hardee's, to the entire lines of house vegan products at grocery chains like Kroger and Target, it's so easy to find delicious vegan food almost everywhere. And with the ever-growing list of innovative, environmentally friendly vegan options to replace animal skins being embraced by designers and retailers, it's easy to wear vegan too. Today, designers can and are making shoes from pineapple leaf or grape leather, sweaters from soy-based vegetable cashmere. They're so cool. Woolen mittens from seaweed and hemp, belts and blazers from mushroom leather. There are so many new fashion-forward materials that really don't harm animals, and the fashion possibilities are just endless. So many thanks to everyone joining us tonight for helping PETA transform the clothing and accessories industry.
Yes, it's really, really exciting to think of all the cruelty-free options and the cruelty-free future that we're creating. I couldn't have imagined it even 10 years ago. So much has changed. It's just phenomenal. We can't rest on our laurels, though, because there are so many animals like those poor alpacas in Peru Dan spoke about who need our action, our voices, our help. We need to educate other people. There are just 2 days left in our special challenge. So please, before we get to your questions, do, if you can, press 7 to give generously, and we will be extremely grateful. I am already extremely grateful to so many people on the call. We've been saving some of the highest amounts for last. Nikki in Michigan, $300. Thank you so much. Charles in New York, $700. I think I know which Charles you are. Carl in Colorado, $200. That makes $400. That's going to go a long way. And Stephen Pablo, I know exactly who you are in Washington, D.C., $500. Tremendous. Cynthia in Nevada, I think I saw you before the lockdown when I was at the country club giving a talk. If that's you, God love you. I love you anyway, whoever you are, but I think that's you. $5,000 makes $10,000. Jason in California, $250. Phenomenal. Kathy in Canada, I know you. $7,500. Doreen, welcome home. Virginia Beach, $5,000. Thank you all so very, very much. And now I think we better hurry over to Lisa and get some questions down.
Thanks, Ingrid. Yeah, we have some great questions coming in. And the first one, it's live, and it's from Louise in Hamilton, Ontario. Louise, take it away.
Hello. My question is Canada Goose getting any closer to dropping fur and down?
I can
Tracy,
take
you want
that
to take
one.
That?
Yeah, sure. This is Tracy. Hi, thank you so much for your question. We think so. You may have heard they pulled a little stunt earlier this year when they said that they were going to no longer buy new fur starting in 2022. This is, of course, very misleading because they include in this fur that is already in the supply chain, which can be unused but new scraps of fur or new but unsold fur. So I think they're playing with words here. And we also think that perhaps they're doing this to try and get around the California ban on fur that goes into effect in 2023. So that's something we'll be looking at. But I do think that doing this was an indication that they really are feeling the pressure, and we are going to keep pushing hard. We have lots planned, and we need all of you, especially those of you who are in the cities where there are Canada Goose stores, to keep pushing them and join us for demonstrations and that kind of thing. They've also diversified. We've noticed quite a lot that they're selling many more coats that don't have any fur or down. And many of their collaborations with celebrities don't include any fur in their coats. We've convinced some, Sundance Film Festival, which partners with Canada Goose, not to allow any of the fur-trimmed coats to be given away or used in their events, and we'll just keep pushing, and we need your help to do that. But we do think that the time is coming soon where they're not going to be able to continue this.
Thanks, Tracy. I wanted to add one thing, and this is to everybody listening. If you ever see a celebrity wearing Canada Goose or you see it on a television show or in a movie, please write to us and let us know, because we get in touch with everybody about it. We've convinced a lot of people to switch over to vegan, cruelty-free coats like, Save the Duck and others. So let us know, because we don't catch everything. I'm going to move on to our next question, and this was submitted on the web from Mark in Tempe, Arizona. And Mark asks, I've been reading about an activist who was run over by a pig truck 2 weeks ago. How has PETA reacted to that? And that is Reagan Russell. And Ingrid, do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, I was very sorry not to be able to fly up to Canada and be there for her memorial service. She was a wonderful PETA member. She had been with us for a long time. She's with Pig Save, too, in just outside Toronto. And I actually have stood at the very spot that she was standing on when the trucks come in to the slaughterhouse full of pigs, and you can put your hands through the slats and comfort them and give them water and what have you. The Pig Save people have been holding vigils up there for a long time. And I don't know exactly what happened. The case is under investigation, but was it 2 Fridays ago, or maybe it was 3 Fridays ago now? And she was a very peaceful, wonderful person. I mean, certainly wouldn't be doing anything untoward, but she was knocked down by a pig truck, and she was killed. And I think it has filled people with determination. I did a eulogy in which I said, let's not just grieve and let's not just show our love for her, but let's remember that she's left a gap in activism that now has to be filled. We have to do more because there's one precious activist not there anymore. And what we need to do is work for her and work for the pigs. And so one of the things we did is 2 of our staff went out to the middle of the country, the Midwest, and we persuaded a farmer, because this horrible situation, now is, well, it would have been horrible anyway, and maybe it's less horrible, but it's still horrible, is that they're killing the pigs. They're calling it euthanasia, which it isn't. They're killing the pigs and the chickens on the farms because the slaughterhouses some of them are closed, some of them are working at a slow pace. And we persuaded this farmer to swap 2 pigs, young piglets, for a huge box of vegan foods. And our staff talked to him for a long time. You can go to our website and you'll see them. We named one Reagan and one Russell. It was Reagan Russell who died. And they've gone to a lovely sanctuary. They're in a foster situation at the sanctuary where they may probably keep them. You know how that is with foster situations. You fall in love and they're there forever. But that was one little thing we could do. And we immediately ran a full-page ad in the top Canada paper in Toronto that said, it's time to move away from meat. And it had a picture of this dear piglet dying on the floor of a factory farm. And we said, nobody needs to eat meat anymore. I mean, my God, if you can't find something that tastes like bacon or ham or pork, then you're not looking. And anyway, if you couldn't, you still shouldn't eat them. So that's what happened there. And please do things in Reagan's honor and do things, obviously, for the pigs. So I'll go back to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Ingrid. We have another question that was submitted on the web from Janice in Grandview, Missouri. And Janice asks, my husband finally went vegan a few months ago, but says he has a problem finding vegan shoes he likes. Any idea on where he might look for shoes or other vegan items as he updates his wardrobe? And I think this is another great one for Tracy.
Yeah, thank you so much to him. We're so excited to hear that. There are so many vegan men's shoes available today. You just need to know where to go. There's a new store called Call It Spring. It's in most shopping malls around the country. It's owned by Aldo. So if you know the Aldo shoe store, it's usually next to that. It's all vegan, and half of it is men's shoes. So it's a terrific option. You can also order online. But H&M has vegan men's shoes. Dexter, Doc Martens, let's see, Hugo Boss, Ken Cole, even Balenciaga has some vegan men's shoes. But department stores are a great option. You just have to know what to look for. The vegan leather now looks so real that you will never know by just looking. You have to kind of pull the tongue back and look, or look in the heel of the shoe or underneath it and look for the the special words, all man-made materials or synthetic upper, or there's the little symbols. And if you don't see the little leather cow symbol, then it's pretty much vegan. But also there are great online places to buy. Mooseshoes.com has just always got great shoes available. There's one of my favorites is Wills in the UK. They have absolutely beautiful men and women's shoes. I think I have 5 pairs of shoes from them. And there's just so many options available. It's, like I said, you just kind of have to get out there and look or do a little searching online, and there's great options available today.
Tracy, we just discovered you are the Imelda Marcos of vegan shoes.
I am. It's very sad.
I was thinking the same thing. And also, if you're not shopping for shoes, but you're out and about and you're shopping, ask for vegan shoes, even if you don't need them, because they need to know that there's a demand for them. And so that's just a little easy activism.
Yeah, and Lisa, I will say, I just have to say, if I go into a store looking for a pair of shoes, and I know it's leather, I always say to the salesperson, I was coming in for shoes, but the smell of the leather, this is all leather, isn't it? And just, wrinkle my nose at it and go, I'm so sorry, no, I couldn't possibly. So I like people to think that leather stinks, too.
Yeah.
And it does. Okay, let's see. I think we have time for one more quick question. So we're going to go live to Doug from Englewood, New Jersey. Doug, take it away.
Hey, thanks for another great town hall. My question is for Dan Mathews. I was wondering, after talking with so many designers for so many years, what do you think is the best way to get the cruel ones to change their tune?
Well, I think it has clearly been seeing the options, and there's so many incredible startups now that are making all kinds of vegan products, everything from apple leather, mushroom leather, soya, cashmere, things like that. They just haven't seen everything. A lot of these companies are young, and so PETA has kind of taken on a role as a trade group for these green eco startups producing these fantastic new materials. And once they see them and they actually feel them, they need to see how they drape and they need to see how they can work with them. The conversation changes completely, and that was especially the case with the designer we partnered with in New York for the vegan menswear show that was all vegan wool. He had always worked with wool his whole career and had never heard that there was such a thing as vegan wool, and he took it on as a challenge to show that it could be done and be just as stylish. So I think supporting the new era of fabrics is a really great argument with those holdouts.
Thanks, Dan. Ingrid.
Yes. So those are all the questions we've had time to answer tonight. I want to thank everybody for asking them. If we didn't get to your question, please hang tight. We will definitely get back to you soon. All questions will be answered. I just have a brief, quick mention because I'm just so grateful to everybody who has chipped in tonight. Really marvelous people. You will keep us strong. In Georgia, we have Cynthia, $250 makes $500. Thank you. Suzanne in Florida, $50. That's just wonderful. Judy, New York, $100. Sandra, South Carolina, $500. That's $1,000 that we can use to save animals. That's phenomenal. And Rose in New Jersey, $25. I think I know you, Rose. Maybe not, but I think I do. And that's $50. Please, if anyone on the call hasn't pressed 7 tonight, please see if you can. Press 7 and give to this campaign. And everything you give will be doubled. Now, if you'd like to stay on the line once Lisa signs off, you can leave a few words of thanks if you care to for those PETA investigators who we all admire. They're the ones who stand there and film the cruelty on places like the alpaca farms in Peru, the shearing sheds in Australia, all the places, the crocodile farms where animals are suffering for this hideous global skins trade. And I thank all of you for your compassion, your determination, your support, most importantly, your activism, and for giving us the funds we need to change the world for animals. So thank you all very, very much. Look forward to talking to you again. And please go online and see us. And you can stay online now after Lisa says a sign-off. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And this does conclude tonight's town hall, but please join us on August 26th for our first ever town hall on the vital animal rescue work supported by PETA's Global Compassion Fund. Thank you all again and have a wonderful night.